I wanted to talk about expansion because Toronto, Catalan, Toulouse, you do get a lot of clubs, heartland clubs, you Battlers and various other clubs. Batley, a fantastic club, I'm just using them as an example of an old heartland club, who sometimes the fans moan about expansion clubs, but I think we need to, in order to grow the game, we need to be global for a start. I think that the international game's got to grow, and also got to, rather than letting the tail wag the dog, the RFL or Super League, whoever it may be, have got to have a strategy for growth, looking at Toronto as a clear example of how it can work, not let people with loads of money like Marwan and Derek Beaumont walk away from the sport, help keep those lunatics in the
asylum.
In the asylum, not lunatics, but they're passionate, but it's like you've got to stroke their ego, and you've got to look after them, and you've got to listen to them. I think most of the time they're just not getting listened to, and they're not getting that real support they need. But we can't afford to lose people like that with that kind of money who are passionate for the sport. But where would you guys see expansion territories? Give me a few sensible opportunities that you might have thought of that we should be looked at. So I know Dublin's been thrown up this week for next year.
I would chuck Dublin in because I come from
Irish
stock, yeah. I come from Irish stock. When Jonesy was talking about gladiatorial spirit, my ancestors were stood on a hill in Ireland, buck naked, with lime in the hair and pointing the beard, naked, fighting the English. So I know all about fighting a losing cause, don't worry about that. But what I would like to see is Dublin, because they've got that in their blood. They like the toil and the tussle, like the North Americans, like the Americans. They enjoy that contact and collision. But you mentioned Cumbria. I would love to see us capitalise on the passion for rugby league. Now, I don't include the professional teams in that because sometimes, some weekends, there will be more spectators watching two amateur teams, and I won't name professional or amateur teams for fear of missing anybody out, but there would be 1,500, 2,000 watching an amateur game because they feel that they've got more connection to that than joining in with a professional club. The argument with Cumbria is, where do you put it? Where's your location? What do you call it? Do you cancel off the three professional clubs and just have that as the centre? There's a lot of work to be done, but I think it's criminal that we haven't at least began the discussions and looked to put that plan in place. But
the greatest example of that is UTC and Tres Catalans, who came together to form Catalan Dragons. And if the Cumbrian teams could get their head around it, and I've been to working in 3 weeks ago, and Leon Price, your old player, is doing a fantastic job there. And there were 1,800 people there, the biggest crowd at season. And Whitehaven looked like the days could be numbered, unfortunately. But surely,
but that's always like that, isn't it?
There should be someone like yourself who's hard enough to go and fight Cumbrians, because I'm certainly not. But someone to get up there and really make a point. I
don't want to chip my teeth now.
The reason why they joined UTC is because of Catalans. Yeah. They had an identity, they had a geographic region. So whilst they had that massive rivalry, they had this big region.
Could you see Cumbria coming together?
It's got to be Cumbria, hasn't it? Yeah. It's got to be a Cumbrian side, and that's the label, and it encompasses all the Cumbrian teams. And do you know what? John Milken made a really interesting point in one of his podcasts. He said, as the top end of the game, the big clubs spent too much time holding themselves back to try and let the other ones catch up at the expense of the game in general. And at some point, you've just got to say, if Whitehaven, as much as I love them, right, and I've been up there as we're standing there as a player, and I love Cumbrians and what they bring to rugby league, but if they just can't have that humility to come together and think about going forward, he's talking about change there, Brian. You've got to change, and it's got to be in some form of Cumbrian side. Just to emphasise that point, everybody thinks NRL's massive. What I was really surprised about when I went to Australia, it isn't as big as what you'd think it is when you talk to average, normal Australians, right? Just know as a sport. No, listen, Melbourne's the most successful team at the minute in NRL. When you go to Melbourne, there's 20,000 there.
That's a Victoria thing,
though. No. You go to Melbourne, there's 20,000. Yeah. You go to some of the Aussie Rules games, There's 80,000 there, right? They're absolutely mad. And I know it's a regional thing, which I emphasise my point to a degree, but the State of Origin is the most watched programme on Australian television in everything that gets broadcast, which goes to show that people must be rooted in either whether you're from New South Wales or Queensland, right? Now, for me, you know, everybody's mad Game of Thrones fans, which is just a rip-off at War at Roses. It is just a rip-off of it. The Lannisters,
not everybody, John.
It is.
Not everybody.
It is. If you understand the story at War at Roses, right through Midlands down south, you know, the majority of the House Lancaster actually controlled Yorkshire. So it wasn't a
Quite
geographic thing, but we've got that story. We've got Yorkshire, Lancashire, and we don't have that identity. Anyway, the Cumbrians need to get rooted in Cumbria and create that team.
Right. So we've had the territories.
Yeah.
No, we haven't. That's me a territory.
And it's going to be a long one, this, isn't it?
No,
What do you reckon? Newcastle, do you think? Not Philadelphia's. David Argyle told me Philadelphia.
Well,
He said that'll be the one for him.
I think there are a number of people with good business people, and there'll be a number of options.
Yeah.
Now, my point I'm going to make is the people that make the decisions as to how a Cumbria happens or how a Newcastle happens and how you structure luck are sat up at Red Hall or in Salford now.
Yeah.
And so when people talk about Eddie Hearn running the game or who's the other Hearn? Barrie Hearn running the game, or I could throw a real hand grenade in here, Maurice Lindsay running the game when he ran the game. Maurice is back. We need some decisions and we need some direction and we need some answers from everybody. Is Robert Elston going to have power over the whole game? Because it has to be for the good of the game as well. We're talking about the amateur game right the way. Who's going to build something where a kid can start as a 6-year-old or a 5-year-old at Stanley or up in Wharfbrow or down in London. London has a magnificent junior setup at the moment, and they've got a career pathway right the way through without any inhibitions into what they consider to be the pinnacle, either international professional rugby league or amateur rugby league or moving on anywhere. And if it looks like Newcastle and it looks like Cumbria, so you've got a northwest versus a northeast clash, and it looks like some of our heartland places. I've not once not talked about the community game because I'm a massive fan of it. There's so many success stories, and you've got a Hull, and all of a sudden you might think about 2 teams in London and not one. Who on earth would try and build a game without a presence in the capital? And I know the dynamics of London is more difficult than the north. It takes you 4 hours to get from one side to the other. And if you're an Arsenal fan, you never ever speak about Tottenham or Chelsea. So maybe the branding there, it has to be a little bit better. But who is going to put that plan together? And you're absolutely bang on. Who's going to build the development? So we've played games on the road at lots and lots of cities. Newcastle last year, we played the Millennium Magic. Not Millennium Magic Weekend. Do we support Newcastle, who are in the League One, enough and give them enough development and enough support to have their vision of a Super League team, which it is, visualised and realised? I'm not sure that we do. I think we've got a great launch it and leave it campaign, and some of the franchise.
They do put that. I know because I know Andy Kelly's a great friend of mine. He was there a few years ago. Just this week, I think the government, and now Phil Kaplan, you'll correct me because I'm always a bit sketchy on details, has just given the RFL £10 million for participation. With a view to the World Cup, exactly. So my vision for that money would be put people in schools, because that 10-year plan, that pyramid that you have to build to get the great players out the top, doesn't necessarily have to have that top player as your focus. The product at the bottom is just as important as the cream at the top. So more players in schools at year 7 playing rugby league. That would be, for 10 years' time, us to have a bigger pool of players to pick from, internationally, domestically, Super League, whatever you want to class it as. But it has to start with those younger players. Then those good players with good attributes, agility, skill, bravery, courage, all the things you need in our sport, then they get signposted to amateur clubs. Then amateur clubs have an overload of players, which then will sprout off more amateur clubs. Now, Leeds is lucky, 20 plus, I think it's 26 clubs in the city that play rugby league. In Oldham, there's 4. Now, I know there's a difference in size, but Oldham has churned out some amazing rugby league players. None of them sat here talking to you, by the way, but some amazing talent has come from that town, despite the fact that amateur clubs in the town will do more for the sport of rugby league than the professional entity. That's not with a dig at Oldham Rugby League. I just believe year 7, year 8 is where all that money should be ploughed, and it shouldn't be left to a teacher who loves rugby league to say, I'll take training after school. It should be in the curriculum, it should be in the schools, but it also should be delivered by specialist coaches who go around the schools on 6 or 8 week programmes, and they spend some quality time identifying talent.